Oi sann, faen, det her var feil side. Det var ikke den siden her jeg skulle være inne på. Hei alle sammen, eller så dere svensker skjønner det. Hei sann allihopa. I dag skal den Nordmann reagere på full historia Sweden og Nordmann med på den bildet. La oss sette i gang. La oss se hva det verste landet i Norges historie har å by på. History of Sweden. Følg med. Flora du.
Sweden, officially the Kingdom of Sweden, is
officially the kingdom of shit.
located in the eastern Scandinavian peninsula, northern Europe,
Eastern Scandinavian penis. Tulla. Jeg skal ikke stoppe meg.
bordering Norway to the west and north, Finland to the east, and Denmark to the southwest. Covering an area
Men for å være helt ærlig, hvis dere ser nøye nå, så er Norge det liksom selve kølla, Finland er ballsekken, og så har du Sverige, en byll. En utvekst på kølla, og det vil du ikke ha.
447,425 square kilometers with a total population of about 10.4 million. Sweden is the largest Nordic country, the third largest country in the European Union, and the fifth largest country in Europe.
Nei, det er ikke sant.
Sweden has been inhabited by the Germanic peoples since prehistoric times, who emerged into history as the Geats and Swedes.
Gots.
During the Viking Age, many Viking expeditions set off from Sweden to both plunder and trade along the Baltic coast and the rivers that stretched deep into present-day Russia. Around the year 1000,
Ok, se på den lille innsjøen Sverige har. De har bare en sånn, liten innsjø, kan fiske litt. Ja, allihopa skal vi fiske litt grann og fiske ut i havet. Og så har du Norge. Å, fy faen, vi kan kjøre hvor vi vil. Bare den lille delen her er like stor som det havet svenskene.
Skåne became the first known king to rule both Svealand and Gotaland, two of three lands of Sweden. During the 11th and 12th centuries, Sweden gradually became a unified Christian kingdom that later included Finland. The kings of the Uppsala city ruled most of modern Sweden except for the southern and western coastal regions. Except for the southern and western coastal regions, which remained under Danish rule.
Bam.
In the 12th century, Sweden remained fragmented with the struggle between the Erik and Sverker clans, eventually ending with the formation of the Belgebo dynasty, which consolidated.
Hva faen spiller dere? Hva heter det spillet igjen? Hva heter det spillet igjen? Spiller dere Valheim IRL, eller?
Consolidated a pre-Kalmar Union Sweden into a strong state. In 1332, King Magnus IV united the kingdom with Norway and Scania.
Var det kong Magnus den 4. som slo Norge sammen med Sverige?
Was, at that time, part of the Kingdom of Denmark. The Black Death killed about a third of the Scandinavian population and led to a long period of economic and population decline in Sweden. After that, the alliance weakened, and Scania was lost to the Danes.
Hey,
Following an internal power struggle in Sweden, Queen Margaret I of Denmark united Sweden, Norway, and Denmark into the Union of Kalmar in 1397.
Det er det verste vi har vært med i. Det er det verste som har skjedd Norge.
During the 16th century, a series of rebellions eventually broke Sweden's ties to the Kalmar Union. The fighting reached a climax following the Stockholm bloodbath, a massacre of Swedish nobles in Stockholm ordered by King Christian II of Denmark in
Du ser at den fyren der kutter hodet av folk og putter det i tønna i hvert fall. Nei! Nei!
The Livonian War was fought.
Nei!
In response to this, Gustav Vasa of the Vasa noble family rose to lead the rebel movement and was crowned king in 1523, paving the way for Sweden's final secession from the Kalmar Union. At the same time, he encouraged Protestant preachers, eventually breaking with the Roman Catholic Church and founding the Lutheran Church in Sweden. In 1544, medieval Sweden's elective monarchy was replaced with a hereditary monarchy under the House of Vasa, which held the Swedish throne until 1654. From the mid-16th century, Sweden had sought expansion into Livonia, in the territory of present-day Estonia and Latvia. But these efforts were hindered by the Russian Tsar via the Russo-Swedish War, which culminated in the Treaty of Novgorod. After Gustav's death,
Han der. Se på det lange. Det der en mann som klør deg i rødholdet i kassa på Kiwi. Og så sier han etterpå, det var ikke meg.
His oldest son, Eric XIV, ascended the throne. By the time of his reign, the Livonian War was fought for control over Old Livonia before the Tsardom of Russia and a varying coalition of Denmark, Norway, the Kingdom of Sweden, and the Polish-Lithuanian Union. At the conclusion of hostilities, Sweden controlled Estonia, forming the Duchy of Estonia. Since the dissolution of the Kalmar Union, Swedish foreign policy had been aimed at gaining control over the Baltic Sea, leading to repeated wars with Denmark from the 1560s onward. Under the reign of King Gustav II Adolf, Sweden gained various
King Gustav II Adolf? Det ikke et heldig navn.
Victories in the 30 Years' War, seizing territories from Russia and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. After defeating Denmark in two wars of 1643 and 1657, Sweden gained control over the provinces of Denmark as well as Finland and provinces in northern Germany. After the Peace of Westphalia and the Peace of Roskilde with Denmark, Sweden emerged as a great power in northern Europe.
Men eier Sverige den delen av Norge?
However, after its defeat in the Great Northern War against a combined force of Denmark, Russia, and Poland, Sweden lost most of its provinces on the other side of the Baltic Sea.
Hva faen? Så vi nordmenn, vi gjorde ingenting for å forhindre det der? Vi bare lot Russland og gjengen ta seg av det? Ja.
Then during the Napoleonic Wars, Sweden lost Finland to Russia. In 1810, a French marshal, Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte, was chosen as heir to the Swedish throne, taking the regnal name of Charles XIV. During his reign, Sweden fought its one last war with the Norwegians, successfully ceding Norway to the empire. Norway, then, was forced into a personal union with Sweden in 1814, which was peacefully dissolved
Jeg hadde aldri blitt enig med det i dag.
in 1905. However, overseas trade was hard hit by the Napoleonic Wars, leading to general stagnation and economic crisis in Sweden. By the late 19th century, 90% of the people still earned their livelihoods from agriculture. Sweden remained neutral throughout World War I,
Selvfølgelig.
trading with both the Allied powers and the Central Powers.
Hva faen?
In response to Swedish trade with Germany, the Allies stopped a large percentage of Sweden's trade,
Bra.
causing a severe food shortage in Sweden. This eventually resulted in the replacement of Sweden's conservative government with a social democratic one. During the war, some Swedes also joined the White Guards with the Germans to fight against the Red Guards and Russians in the Finnish Civil War, and briefly occupied land jointly with the German Empire. However, Sweden ultimately withdrew following Finnish protests. At the outbreak of World War II in September 1939, Sweden again maintained its policy of neutrality. During the German invasion of the Soviet Union, Sweden allowed the Wehrmacht to use Swedish railways to transport the German troops and heavy weapons from Norway to
Dere svikere, eller?
Finland. For the Allies, Sweden helped to train soldier refugees from Denmark and Norway to be used in the liberation of their home countries. It also allowed the Allies to use Swedish air bases between 1944 and 1945.
Nå skal vi se. Today, Sweden got Ullared. En Nordby sendte det.
Sweden was one of the first non-participants of World War II to join the United Nations. During the post-war era, Sweden flourished in industry, facilitating the development of the social welfare system called folkhemmet. the people's home, a
Folkhemmet.
Swedish term for the Swedish welfare
Det betyr noe helt annet I Norge.
state or the Swedish model.
Det jo
However,
Nav.
by the 1970s, the economies of the rest of Western Europe were prosperous and growing rapidly.
Ser dere det? Norge sin økonomi. Svopp.
While the Swedish economy stagnated. During the Cold War, Sweden publicly maintained a strict neutrality policy and, at the same time, kept unofficially strong ties with the US, Norway, Denmark, West Germany, and other NATO countries.
Hei. Når Sverige skal drive og bli enige med land, så burde landet være... Da burde alle folka som bor I det landet være enige. Og jeg hadde ikke vært enig.
A few years after the end of the Cold War, Sweden became a member of the European Union. By 2000, compared to the rest of Europe, Sweden witnessed great economic growth with low unemployment and inflation rates. In 2018, the Social Democrats and Greens formed a minority government led by Prime Minister Stefan Löfven. After the resignation of Stefan Löfven, Finance Minister Magdalena Andersson became Sweden's first female prime minister. She then formed a minority government made up of only her Social Democrats. Currently, Sweden possesses a highly developed economy and maintains an extensive social welfare system following the Nordic model. Sweden is also a member of many organizations, such as the United Nations, the Nordic Council, the Council of Europe,
Det der jo det svanemerket.
the World Trade Organization, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development.
Thanks for watching. If you find this information useful, please...
Nei, det gjorde jeg virkelig ikke. Jeg fant bare ut av svakhetene til Sverige, så nå vet jeg hva vi skal gjøre for å ta over Sverige. Hei sann, svenske pojkar og jenter, pojkar.